Kate Winslet, we're talking to you on after two Emmy nominations for Mare of Easttown. Now, one's for acting, the title role, and the other's for producing this amazing HBO limited series. And this is your first time producing. What was it about this project that made you want to take that leap?
Um, well, it's a really great question, one that I feel so happy to be able to answer. I think I just felt that I think I just felt with Mayor of Easttown that I wanted all of the actors to feel as though they had a leader. I wanted that, and I also wanted the crew to feel as though there was an executive producer always present, because it was such a big show and we had so many crew members, and obviously we shot over a number of months. Um, and often with a producer or an executive producer, they aren't physically there. They have other projects going on. Sometimes they can be in another state entirely or even another country. And it just made sense to me. I didn't want there to be a hierarchy. I wanted to obliterate all of that. I wanted it to absolutely feel like a community. And I've learned a lot over the years, and I didn't want to pretend that I could be a producer before I was ready to be. And I suppose I felt, I've earned my stripes. I kind of know what I'm doing here. And it felt like the right moment in my life, and particularly with this show, and because of what we wanted it to feel like for everyone.
I couldn't help but think of your grandparents and their rep theater in Reading. And then that is sort of egalitarian, where maybe you're the lead one week and then you're, the butler the next in a play. And so I love that you did that. I talked to Mark Roble, who brought you this project, working with Brad Inglesby, the wonderful creator writer. And he told me this wonderful story about trailers and how I guess there's sort of the hierarchy of trailers on a set, and how you had a very specific requirement in terms of your trailer.
Well, I just look, I mean, Paul, I have to be honest, like I I don't like hierarchy. I never have. I've never understood it. This idea that you become more famous, you get paid more, you become bigger, you win awards, you have, bells and whistles around you. So why does that mean as an actor that you should get more stuff than
Right.
anybody else? You're all doing the same job. It's just a load of old hot air, quite honestly. It
Right.
doesn't mean anything. It's a waste of money that I would rather was spent on the screen. And also it's a waste of fuel. So, when you think of all of those huge trucks and the
Yeah.
amount of stuff we're pumping into our precious environment, I just didn't want that. I wanted us to reduce our carbon emissions as much as we possibly could. But more importantly than anything else, I wanted to be walking at the same pace as our entire cast. So it just didn't make sense to me to have something that was different to everyone else, when the whole point of me being a producer, and also what I wanted to do in terms of setting the tone, it was about establishing a community that we all existed in. And you can't do that as an actor if you're separate. If you have all that big stuff, you become a little bit more removed. You become less approachable. You become
Right.
less of a team player. And for me, it's all about being a team player and a team leader. And so that it just mattered a lot to me. Yeah, I said to Mark Roybal, please don't give me a big trailer, I'll cry. And so yeah, he thought that
Right.
was quite
So
amusing.
I think one of the reasons it resonated with people was sort of on the external, that sense of community. And I think about the Emmy nominations for the below the line, for the costume designer, the production designer, and how important is that, those aspects to you to create the character of Mare, like the costumes, the house she lives in, the station house, that environment. I know I spoke to both of them and they talked about the contributions you made to that.
Well, I mean, everyone was just lovely and welcoming, and wanted my input. And I was so grateful for that, because of course that does bring it all together. You know, the conversation, the shared dialogue, and the shared rhythm at which you all work contributes to the beating heart of a community that we were trying to create. And I think I hope that's why ultimately audiences have responded to just how real it looked. We all work towards this same exact goal. So Megan Kasperlik, our costume designer, and I mean, we really just had the same idea about Mare, which was that she just had to look bad and then badder and then a little bit badder, you know. So no bras, t-shirts hitting at the widest possible part of the hip, you know, pants that just sat a little bit more lower slung so it would make my butt look kind of wide and sort of
Yeah.
flattish, you know. We just loved all that. I mean, that for me, like, that's where Mare becomes Mare, really, in terms of how she looks and that sort of heaviness of her. So Megan and I worked very, very closely together on that, and the look of her, and also decisions like, you know, how many decent dresses did she have? Well, probably one somewhere, maybe stuffed at the back of her closet, that she bought, you know, perhaps 12 years ago and just recycles for every christening, every wedding, every important event. But those are things you do have to establish. Keith Cunningham, our designer, our production designer, he was absolutely welcoming of, you know, what color would she have on her walls? Has she even papered the walls of her house since she first bought it? You know, how long did Kevin and his girlfriend Carrie live downstairs in that basement? And how often do I visit that space based on associations with it? So those were conversations we had all the time. The interior of Mare's car, for example, you know, those cup holders would have been rammed filled with, like, you know,
Right.
moldy egg sandwiches and 5 days old cups of coffee that she just never got round to throwing out. She just kept piling them up one on top of the other. You know, and she used that car for taking Drew to, you know, to preschool and swim lessons. And so it would have been full of kind of a kid's world as well. And all of those things were very important.
And then the other thing everyone made mention of is through and through the cast, the Delco accent. You know,
Oh
I
my
know
God.
you famously played a different kind of Philadelphia girl in one of your first big films, but this accent, as you just said, oh God. So it was a
Yeah.
toughie.
I, it was, Paul, it was just so hard for all of us every day. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, because the difficulty with the Delco dialect, well, there are two things about it that are very, very difficult. Actually, three. The first thing is the actual strangeness of the vowel sounds and how people from Delaware County tend to sort of smush words together. So they don't say wouldn't, couldn't, it's wouldn't, couldn't. I mean, these are quite odd, grunty almost noises. And obviously the O sound, you know, Delco, home, alone, you know, that kind of thing. But how there was no consistency with vowel sounds. That was the other thing that threw us. So that was the first thing that was really quite complicated. The second thing that we all found very, very hard as well was, um, I've forgotten what the second thing was, but I'm sure there was one. Um, and the third thing is that even to an American ear, it's an odd sound. People don't even recognize what it is. And so for me personally, I'm constantly trying to obviously get rid of the English, but I had to eradicate any shred of English from my entire body. It's not just about the noises you make, it's the muscularity in the face, it's the posture, it's the belonging in that place. And so the dialect, yes, was a huge part of all of that, but it became it became a bigger part of the entire shape of Mare, and where she's from, and working that bit harder to convince people that I've never been English, was never English in the first place. I'm not English now and never will be again. Like, I
Right.
had to be so immersed and completely buried in it. It was like becoming fluent in a truly foreign language. And yeah, it was like some days it was like super sucky, and I'd think, oh my God, I can't do this. How are we going to get through it?
Well, yeah, well, I know. I mean, there's a Philly girl in the White House now, Jill Biden, and she gave it a ringing endorsement. So, you know, there's all that work, but you were doing so much work long before filming begins. I mean, I was staggered to read about the backstory that you develop for each and every one of your characters, and so in awe of you creating this really expansive backstory. So many things that aren't in the script, and just if you could talk a little bit about that process without giving away anything too intimate.
Well, for me, I think, this was a very different role for me in the sense that Easttown, or where she's from, and the overlapping histories, shared rituals and rhythms and traditions that exist in a small town and exist in the town where I grew up in. I'd never come across something where people's lives are just bleh. They absolutely overlap in multi-layered ways. Um, and so we had to underpin everyone's narrative in a place that was real. Like, for example, I said to Mackenzie Lansing, who plays Brianna, I said to her, okay, so come on, what's our relationship? And she said, oh, you don't like me. You've never liked me. And I said, correct. I've never liked you. And we figured out, exactly the moment when she would have crossed Mare in just the wrong way, and how Mare harbors these feelings about people and just can't quite shake them off. And also Mare is very instinctive and intuitive about what a person can really be like as a human being, and whether they do or they don't quite belong, or where they fit in that community. She had to know everyone inside out and back to front in order to be Mare Sheehan. So it was just important that we established those backstories and those histories. And the most important part of that for me was really the relationships with Mare and Helen, and
Mm,
with Mare and Laurie.
right.
Because if you think about Mare and Helen, they've gone through so much. Mare's father committed suicide when she was 13 years old. So, and she was an only child. So, what did that do to her relationship with her mother? I mean, it would have had absolutely enormous knock-on effects. How did they discuss that grief? Did they even process that grief? So we had to really handle that stuff delicately. And also Mare's relationship with Laurie, this is someone she probably went to preschool with. They've probably known each other since they were 3. Maybe Helen even crossed paths with Laurie's mother at some point. So, I come from a world like that one. I come from a world where if, so and so's fallen off the wagon again and is going to go back into rehab, the entire street knows about it. Or Elaine, who lives at number 5, is getting her varicose veins done again, the whole road will also know. And if there's some kind of a charity drive for somebody's, cancer treatment, I was from that world. And so I know about those histories, and I know about how they create the rhythm of a place. And so we just had to do it. We just had to build and invent those stories, and we had to believe in them. We had to completely believe them.
Yeah, and as evidenced by, I mean, Julianne Nicholson, Jean Smart, who played Laurie and Helen, both Emmy nominated. The chemistry between the three of you is just is it's so compelling to watch. And I love that Julianne said yes without having read episode 7, and that's because of her faith in you.
Fool that she is. Yeah, I mean, I just could never, I couldn't imagine anyone but Julianne really playing Laurie, because Julianne has, first of all, she's a brilliant actress. Everything she does is so subtle and so delicate and so perfectly nuanced and balanced. But as a woman, she's very warm. I've seen her as a mother. I know how she's raising her children. I have huge respect for how she's raising her children. And Julianne she is mother. That's who she is first and foremost. And that's Laurie. And so I just thank God that she agreed to say yes before reading 7. And she did beg me for it. She said, could you just sneak it to me? And I could have done. I could have gone send. But I said, I really mustn't. I can't. That I have been told I mustn't do that. And so I said, my exact words were, if you say no, I promise you'll regret it. And she was like, okay, I'm in. So thank God. Thank God.
And then Jean Smart, who we saw on HBO Max in Hacks. So I mean, if you take the exact opposite of Helen,
I know.
Yeah, and what the scenes between the two of you are just, again, a treat to watch. Listen, I just want to close by, there's 3 words: passion, vulnerability, and depth. Now, those aren't word, those words could describe Mare Sheehan, but they're actually words that Marion Cotillard used to describe Hannah Schmitz at the 2009 Oscars when you won the Academy Award. And I just rewatched that ceremony, and really it brought tears to my eyes. That take us back there, that moment that those five women are on stage and each of them has spoken to a nominee.
Yeah, it's amazing that you would bring this up because I was actually thinking about Marion just yesterday. And she's such an extraordinary woman and such a beautiful, powerful actress. And, when I look back on that ceremony, I I can't believe how fortunate I was to not only win, but to win under those circumstances. I think if we as actresses can present to the world and to younger generations of aspiring young actors this sense of admiration for one another
Mhm.
and unity and appreciation and celebration of each other's work. You know, we live in a world where we we need this. We need to have each other's backs. We need to be able to say, "Well done, I'm proud of you." And to have experienced that from Marion and those incredible words she said to me that were all her own, I honestly will treasure and cherish those words and that moment for really for the rest of my life because of how unique that concept was in the Academy Awards that year. I will never forget it. I hope they do that again because it was
It was,
completely overwhelming.
yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, thank you, and I'm for taking the time. I know you're very much in demand on this awards cycle, but thank you again. What a pleasure.
What a pleasure, Paul. Thank you very much.